Welcome to episode 21, the first Nightmare Buffet episode. Now, Nightmare Buffet is basically where you hear encounters about everything. Dogman, alien, Bigfoot, humanoid, ghost, all of it. Instead of just focusing on just one, like instead of it being a Dogman episode focusing on Dogman encounters, or an alien episode focusing on alien encounters, you get a little bit of everything. And today I have three. I'm bringing 9 stories to you, 9 encounters, but 3 of the 9, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little perplexed. I have an encounter about a werecat, which is basically like a dogman werewolf, but instead of looking like a wolf or a dog, it has features of a cat. That's the first I've ever received of an encounter like that. I'm gonna start off with that encounter. Got 2 alien stories for you. Bigfoot Dogman story. 2 stories from the military. 2 stories from a Hurricane Katrina. And speaking on Hurricane Katrina, because of the Hurricane Katrina stories, this episode might be a little graphic. I will tone it down. I'm not going to go too far out there, but it does deal with a body recovery. And so they do describe what it's like recovering bodies post Hurricane Katrina. So disclaimer, it might get just a little bit graphic, nothing crazy. And yeah, I can't wait for you guys to hear the 3 stories that I'm perplexed about. I don't really know how to categorize it, and I don't really have a theory for yet. So once I get to those stories, I'll let you know. I also have an Area 51 theory, but I'll wait till I get to the alien stories to discuss that. And I also have a theory about Hollywood. So this is going to be a fun episode. If you've had an encounter or you know somebody who has had a sighting or encounter, don't be afraid to reach out to me to my email or on Instagram or on a Facebook group, which, by the way, if you're not part of the Facebook group, join that. You can send me your story and I can retell it for you, or you can come on the show. We'll schedule time to talk, come on the show, and you can share your story, your encounter, and your theories and your opinion, on the show. Just hit me up. And without further ado, we're going to kick things off with the Werecat encounter. Blake was on a summer camping trip. There was about 30 other, kids, teens in attendance. And the cabins they were staying in had windows on the front and the back of the cabin. And there was a front and back door to all of the cabins. Now, the bathrooms were about 200 yards away. And around 1 a.m, after the campers were up telling scary stories, Blake asked his friend to come with them because they had a buddy system, as most, if not all, camps do. Now, before leaving, they grabbed their knives in case they ran into a mountain lion or a bear. And Blake said that he realizes the knives weren't going to do much, but it made them feel safer. Now, it was the walk back from the bathroom that made Blake never view woods or life the same ever again. It was during the walk back from the bathroom that Blake said it was a primal fear, if that makes sense, that came over him. It was a fear he has never felt before, and a fear he can't really describe unless you have experienced it yourself, which I personally have. When I believe I had an encounter, but I never saw anything. I tell that story, I think, in like episode 2 or 3, my own personal Dogman Bigfoot possible encounter. But that fear, it's not like your normal fear, like when you're on a roller coaster, or if you're afraid of heights and you go on a roller coaster, not that type of fear. This fear, it's primal. It's like a part of your, I don't know, it's like instinctual. Blake looks to his friend, and his friend had the same look as he did. So they pulled out their knives and they started to walk a little bit faster. And it was then that Blake turned around and saw it. It looked similar to a cat, but this thing was over 7 feet tall. and it was on its hind legs and kind of hunched over. Blake's friend saw this thing too, and that's when they started sprinting back to the cabin. And when they got back to the cabin, they started pounding on the door for the other campers to let them in. Now, when they let them in and they told them what they saw, they were actually, Blake said in hindsight, he was actually a little surprised that the other campers believed him and his friend in what they saw. So they locked the front door and they tried to lock the back door, but the lock for the back door was locked. Or it was broken, not locked. The lock to the back door was broken. So the back door basically had no lock. So what they did was they pushed the table up against the back door, and they all basically sat in the middle of the room, the middle of the cabin, with all the lights on. And it was then that they saw eye shine, the eyes of this creature, as it slowly moved from window to window, making its way to the back door. And that's when they heard this creature bumping against the back door, trying to get in. What felt like an eternity, but was probably more like a few minutes. Finally, this creature left. They heard it walk away. The bumping stopped, but they didn't trust it. Nobody slept that night. They were afraid that this thing was waiting for them to fall asleep. That way it could just basically bust in and catch them by surprise. Now, when the adults came in the morning to wake them up, the kids told them everything. And of course, in typical fashion, the adults laughed it off and said that they were making it up. They were up too late telling each other scary stories. They brushed it off. The counselors brushed it off. But he said, even if the adults don't, believe, all the kids there know what they saw that night and know what happened. What's your theory on this Werecat? The way Blake described the Werecat, over 7 feet tall, hunched over, it looked like, he said basically it was a jaguar, a walking 7 foot, 8 foot tall jaguar is the best way he can put it. Kind of like, think of that character from Tekken, and I'm going to put the picture, I can't remember his name, but he was my favorite character in Tekken. The guy with the jaguar head. That's not what he saw, but imagine the head was similar to what he saw. It's not exactly a jaguar or leopard's head or anything like that, but it was cat-like. He had a really hard time describing it. He brought up the Tekken character. He basically said, take the template of the guy with the jaguar head and just add a bunch of fur. But the head was bigger. Like, the head was bigger than any big cat that we know of. The head was huge. It was hunched over. It was tall. It was on hind legs. And so after hearing the description and him trying to describe it, two things popped into my mind because I love movies. So I was trying to think of things other than Tekken to come up with. And two things came to my mind. There's a movie, I believe it's a Stephen King movie, with like Werecat people where they basically suck the soul out of you to stay young. I asked him if he'd seen it. He said, no, I can't remember the name of the movie off the top of my head. But I emailed him a picture of what the Werecat people in that movie looked like. And I also sent him a picture of, and this might be a little corny, but I'll get to the Hollywood theory in a minute. I sent him a picture of the Werecat people from the animated Scooby-Doo movie, Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island. So I sent him a picture of both of those, and he was like, it wasn't exactly like the one in Scooby-Doo, but basically he was like, the Stephen King movie and the Scooby-Doo movie, that's as close as it's going to get. It wasn't exactly like that because the one in the Stephen King movie, I think they were hairless. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I believe they were like hairless. They morphed into these cat people, and it was all just like that naked cat with no fur. And then the Scooby-Doo movie, they were covered in fur. So he said it was a mixture between the Stephen King movie, of how they looked in the Stephen King movie, but also a mixture of how they looked in the Scooby-Doo movie. It was like a blend of the two. But he said he would never forget it. And I'm wondering what you, the audience, think. What's your, I don't, actually, I do have a theory. My theory, my opinion on this, and I wouldn't be surprised if I get more stories from people about werecats. And I hope I do. But my theory is that, okay, we have werewolves slash Dogman. I don't really like the name Dogman, but we have werewolves. We have Bigfoot. Why? I feel like werecats are not too far fetched. That werecats make sense to me because just like you have wolves and dogs, you have cats and big cats. You have wolves, which are cousins to dogs, and then you got big cats. So why can't we have Dogman and werecats, werewolf and werecat? You know what I mean? So I feel like it makes sense. Now, that begs the question, why are dogmen or werewolves being seen more often than werecats? As far as I'm concerned, this is the first werecat story encounter that I've received. Who knows how many werecat encounters there are? Werecats could be seen as often as dogmen, or it's tough because this is my first story, and I haven't heard any werecat stories on too many other podcasts. So I feel like they're not seen as often as dogman slash werewolves, but I could be wrong. Because a lot of people, for every person that shares a story with the podcast, I feel like you probably got 5 people who never will. So who knows how often these werecats are seen, but let me know what you think. What's your theory? What's your opinion? I do believe werecats are out there. Why not? Because if you have a dog-like creature on its hind legs, why can't you have a cat-like creature on its hind legs? You know what I mean? So to me, it makes sense. As far as what it is, I think dogmen, werecats, Bigfoot, I personally think they are Nephilim. And that's a whole nother, I think they're Nephilim, and I personally believe that there is an inner earth. But that's a whole nother can of worms. That's my theory. That's my opinion on it. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. And if you have had, or you know anybody that has had a werecat encounter, email me. My email's in the description. Reach out to me on Facebook. Join the Facebook group. I want to hear it. I want to hear about these things because you're not crazy. You're not, just because nobody has heard of that before or they don't hear about it as often does not mean what you saw is fake. It doesn't mean that you're going crazy. It doesn't mean that, some podcasters might turn you away. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But for me, I accept all stories. I don't care how outlandish you think it is, because I'm going to retell it. And if I retell it, guess what? Somebody listening may go, oh, shit, I seen something similar to that. Like, okay, so I'm not the only one. That's the whole point of this podcast. You tell your story. You give me your story, or you come on, you tell it, and then I share it for other people to hear. And it's basically to encourage other people to share what they've seen. Because right now, I can guarantee you most, if not everybody who has had an encounter, thinks they are alone, or thinks that, I don't know, it's like, hey, I saw a werecat, but everybody's talking about Bigfoot and Dogman. So I'm in the 0.1%, 0.1%. And the reality is, more than likely, you are not. If you've seen a werecat, I'm going to be honest with you, there's a 90% chance there are thousands of other people who have seen it, but they're just too afraid to come out and say that. Even with podcasters like mine, even though we promised that, hey, you can change your name, you don't even have to give a name, we'll make up a name. Like Blake. Blake is not the person's real name. I made that up. They're just afraid that, you know, the government might come after them. They're afraid that they'll be laughed at. They're afraid that they might lose their career. It's a bunch of different reasons to be afraid, but you got to get it off your chest. So let me know what y'all think down in the comments below about this encounter. This next Dogman encounter comes from Barb. She hosts the From Cape Breton, It's Saturday Night podcast, as well as she has her own YouTube channel called Barbara Geddes. I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I pronounced that, but I'm gonna put it up on the screen. I'm gonna put the name of the podcast along with the name of her YouTube channel up on the screen for you to see. So that way you can go follow her YouTube, go listen to the podcast, go show Barb some support, and tell her that Chris Moss from True Untold Nightmares sent you. Barb has been experiencing the paranormal since she was a young child, so she's seen her fair share of weird and freaky stuff. But her encounter was far beyond anything she has ever experienced or seen before or since. And honestly, she thought she was Coco for Cocoa Puffs. Those are her exact words. And it wasn't until a recent ghost hunting event at the National Historic Fortress of Louisburg site located in Louisburg, Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, that she met a guy that has also seen one. To say that she was shocked is an understatement. I also apologize for butchering those words just now. March 2001, the night was cold but clear, given, their northern Canadian winters. Barb's best friend was moving to Ontario within the next few days and needed to run a few errands to wrap up any loose ends, which included returning a book she had borrowed from her grandmother. Now, since Barb wanted to spend as much time with her before she moved, so she offered to pick her and her 2 young children up, run the errands with her, and then maybe grab a coffee and chat. So early into their evening, they headed into the city to pick up some last minute things. Then one of the last errands on her list was to return the book to her granny. She drove the 15 minutes from the city to her grandmother's house, which was located in the countryside. Well, they call it the boonies. It was dark out, but it was a clear night sky. You could see the stars. She drove up the driveway to the home, which was about 1/4 a mile longish, and she parked by the back door around the back of the small home. Her 1993 Chevy Cavalier was facing the wooded tree line with the lights shining on a small bank of snow. Her friend's 2 young children were sleeping in the back in their car seats. Her friend ran inside to deliver the book and to say goodbye to her granny. Her friend was inside for about 5 to 10 minutes. Barb can't remember the length of time perfectly, when she started to see eyes along the tree line ahead of her, where the lights of her car were shining. Now, Barb looked more closely and could see that it was a pack of coyotes, so her heart started to race a bit. Coyotes are very common in their area. To see them, whether it's one or a pack of them, it's not out of the ordinary. However, it is usually only one at a time while it is running across the road, or you hear the pack in the distance howling for a kill or after a kill to signify that dinner's ready. She hasn't seen a pack staring back at her before. Barb had her eyes locked on them and started to pray that her friend didn't wander out of the house at that moment. And she was trying to come up with ways to scare them off so that her friend wouldn't encounter them when she came outside. It was then when she felt it staring at her. The dogman or werewolf or whatever you want to call it. She was sitting in the driver's seat and felt it staring. She turned slowly and looked out her door's window, and it was bent down, hunched over, looking in the window at her. In less than a flash, she whipped her head back to look at the children and hit the all-door lock on the door. And when she turned back again, it was gone. Then she looked up at the coyotes and they were gone. In less than a minute, her life went from carefree to scared shitless. The dogman she saw, she said it was about 6 feet, maybe 7 feet tall. Hard to tell in such a short time. It was hunched over and she was 1,000,000% scared. It was like a tawny brown gray in color, had a mane of hair around its face, and its face looked more coyote wolf-like, and it had horns, like a ram. Horns. The easiest way to describe what she saw is to say what Hollywood depicts as the devil. Now, Barb commented on episode 20, and on the thumbnail of episode 20, Barb says the image of that dogman with the horns on the thumbnail of episode 20, you can go and look. That's pretty damn close to what she saw. Its eyes were small and piercing, and it definitely had sharp fanged teeth. It was overly muscular, she said. So she knew if it did want to hurt her, or worse, a locked door wasn't going to stop it at all. Apparently, the dogman in that local area is known to run with coyotes, which begs the question, what is up with this coyote dogman connection? Like, this isn't the first time I've heard of a pack of coyotes, being around or being spotted running with a dogman, or being, around a dogman, or, you know what I mean? Like, what? I really don't have any theories, because I've also heard of stories of dogmen killing coyotes. So it's kind of like they kill coyotes, but then they run with coyotes. It's like, I don't know. I really don't have a theory for that one. But for the listeners, what is your theory, or what's your opinion on this coyote dogman connection? But also, what is up with the horns? This is now my second encounter that I've received of a dogman with horns. Like, what? Like, I already believe that dogman werewolves are Nephilim. As far as the horns thing, I would say, now, my original theory was that, okay, a dogman with horns is a demon that has taken the shape of a dogman to scare people. But as Barb has shared, that apparently the dogman in that local area is known to run with coyotes. Okay, well, maybe now it's not what I think it is. Like, it could, I don't know. I don't know where to begin, because it's like, I believe they're Nephilim, but I also believe demons can take the shape of things, kind of like It in the movie It the Clown, how it takes shape of what scares the kids the most. I believe that demons can take shape and appear as a dogman, or they can possess. I believe they can also possess dogman. But dogman with horns, I'm rethinking my theory that it's just a demon that took the shape of a dogman. I am now starting to believe that dogmen with horns are just a variant of a dogman werewolf. Meaning basically, I don't know if this is going to make sense. It's like there's different variants of a dogman. There's different types of dogman. Dogman with the horns is its own like subgroup. Like, okay, you have dogman / werewolf, whatever you want to call it, right? Then let's say you have werewolves that are skinny, werewolves that are fat, like super muscular, werewolves that are lean, werewolves with horns, werewolves with no horns, hell, werewolves with one horn, I think there's just different variants of dogman. That's honestly my opinion. I think dogman with horns is just what they are. It's a dogman with the horn, but you would, it's like a subgroup of the main group. The main group is werewolves, and there's different subgroups. I don't know. Let me know your theories and your opinions on the Coyote Dogman connection and Dogman with horns, because I they're already bad. Seeing them is already bad enough, but to see one with horns, I I don't know. I don't know. I think it depends on the encounter. I feel like I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna just leave it at that. I'm gonna have to sleep on it, think about it some more, and then I'll come back with some more stuff. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Once again, if you have had an encounter with a dog man that doesn't typically fit what other people have said their encounters with dogmans have looked like, share it anyway. Email me, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram. Share what you have seen so we can try to make sense of this weird misshapen puzzle. And also, shout out to Barb for emailing me and sharing that encounter. Thank you very much. And also, go follow her YouTube channel. Check her out. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about aliens. Now, these two alien sightings, encounters, or UFO sightings, they're brief. But after I give the two encounters, then I'm going to talk about my Area 51 theory. But this first UFO sighting wasn't emailed to me. I got this brief sighting from somebody. I forgot where I was. I was somewhere running errands, and basically I was rocking my True Untold Nightmare shirt, and a guy was, the logo, there's a UFO like shooting off, and the guy was basically just asking me about the logo, and that's when he brought up his story of what he saw. He asked if I believed, and I was like, yeah. I told him about my show, told him, I retell stories, all that. And he basically gave me his brief UFO sighting story. And so the guy said that he lives out in the middle. He's lived out in the middle of nowhere for about 10 years. He's a smoker. He's a night owl. And when he is taking his smokes outside, sometimes he'll walk and smoke, or sometimes he'll just stand on his porch and just, smoke and enjoy the environment, the scenery. So doing both of those things, he said he's seen some strange things. But one night while he was out smoking, standing on his porch, he saw distant points of light changing course and shooting off at extreme speeds. Now, at first, he said that he figured it's probably meteorites deflecting off the atmosphere, or, shooting stars, whatever. He believes, or he figures, that if an alien intelligence, or if an alien was really intelligent, the last thing they would have on their spacecraft is a bunch of lights to give themselves away. And he's seen a couple instances of things like that, of points of light changing course and shooting off, probably a dozen or so times. But the one thing that's made him rethink all this, the one thing that he's seen that to this day gives him chills and just baffles him, was that he saw a black oblong object. Think cylinder, like like a cylinder thermos water bottle or something like that. Cylinder shape, floating through the sky. A black cylinder object floating through the sky, and it was darker than the night sky itself. And you would think something that big would make noise. He said it was dead quiet. And maybe he's remembering some things, but he recalls the night being quiet too. Like there was no wind, no crickets, no birds, nothing. Just silence. And that was in the middle of summer. Now, he did say that he told his family, but of course his family didn't believe him. So he was like, oh, what the hell? You know, it is what it is. He said, honestly, if it was anybody else that told me that, I wouldn't believe him neither. Now, this second UFO sighting story, which is also very, very brief, comes from somebody else. This one came through email. About 15 years ago, this person said they were at a street party and the night sky was fairly clear. And they remember seeing a flying object in the sky, but they thought it was a plane. Because at night you have the planes with the little blinking lights going by. This person said they thought it was a plane until whatever was flying stopped in the middle of the sky and moved in a small circle a couple times and disappeared. And they weren't the only ones who saw this. The neighbors saw it too. Several of the neighbors saw this damn thing too. But nobody could explain what it was. And they were at a party, so, nobody was thinking to whip out the cell phone. And this was 15 years ago? So roughly, oh, yes, no. Back then, cell phones were not, they don't have the cameras they have now. And even with the cameras that cell phones have now, you're not going to get a HD quality, UFO picture or video. So that's the second sighting. That was basically it. But if there's any listeners out there that have had alien encounters, weird things going on, been visited, seen UFOs, seen a UFO, but then you have missing time, because I've heard that a lot too. Email me. If you want to come on the show and tell your story, you can do that too. I am open to everything. Don't think your story is too outlandish. But now that brings me to my Area 51 theory. My theory about Area 51 is that Area 51 is a meeting ground where exchanges happen. Let me explain. I think it's a meeting ground between the government and extraterrestrial life. That's my theory. I think the government has made contact with aliens. I believe that aliens do come through portals. I don't think they travel through space to get to us. I think aliens have superior technology and they utilize portals to get to us. And I believe that a lot of the aliens live here on Earth in disguise, like on some Men in Black stuff. And I know this is probably a little far-fetched, but just stick with me. I believe Area 51, yes, is a meeting ground where the government can comfortably communicate with aliens and make exchanges. Just like you have the, I don't know what it's called, but basically all the countries around the world, the leaders of the countries around the world, they get together and basically exchange. They sell weapons to each other. Even though they don't like each other in the public eye, when it comes to selling and buying weapons, they will do it with each other. I believe that happens in Area 51, but with other life. Now, that might be a crazy theory. I might be onto something. I don't know. And the reason I came up with this theory is because American Horror Story. I was watching American Horror Story double feature. It's not that great. American Horror Story double feature, the alien, because I think the first half of the season was about vampires. Second half of the season is about aliens. Now, one of the things that they talk about in American Horror Stories or American Horror Story is how President Eisenhower makes a treaty with aliens that aliens can come and abduct 5,000 Americans a year in exchange for their technology. And honestly, that got me thinking. I was like, wait, even though it's a show, What if there's some truth to that? Even if there's 2% truth in that scenario, there's some truth in it. And it made me think, I'm like, wait, everybody talks about how Area 51, they imprison aliens or they dissect aliens or perform autopsy on aliens or crashed UFOs they take and expect and break it down and try to build. What if Area 51 is a meeting ground? What if, you know, the UFOs we see in the sky are not necessarily aliens flying them? What if it's us, humans, testing out the, technology that the aliens have traded with us because we are making secret exchanges? You know what I mean? For us Hamilton fans, the room where it happens. Yeah. Now, my theory on Hollywood, like I just said, with American Horror Story, them talking about how the presidents, how, Eisenhower has made a pact with the aliens. Hey, you can take 5,000 Americans a year or 5,000 people from this planet a year, and in exchange, we'll get some of your technology. Then you have movies like Men in Black. That's like aliens are among us. They have lived among us for hundreds of years. We're just here. We're covering it up. And if you so happen to witness something, flash, and then your memory becomes whatever we tell you it is at that moment. I think there's some truth in Hollywood. I'm not going to lie. I believe that when they come up with these stories in Hollywood, there's some truth to it. And I think the government lets Hollywood, I think the government and Hollywood are kind of hand in hand. I think the higher ups are like, hey, yes, this is real, but we want you to make it fantasy, package it in a way where people will brush it off. Oh, you watched, which is when you actually see something in real life, what's the first thing that people say? You watch too many movies. But what if, because I've also heard a lot of people who've seen Dogman. Oh, it looks like the one in Van Helsing, it looks really like that one, or it looks really like, the way they create these werewolves in the movies, it's really close to what I've seen. I think not only the government, Hollywood being hand in hand thing, but I also think some of those people who create the costumes and the designs, there's a lot of people in Hollywood who have witnessed a Bigfoot, witnessed a Dogman, witnessed aliens, or encountered aliens, encountered a Werecat. But instead of talking about it, they create it. They recreate it as therapy. And it's like, that's my theory anyway. I think a lot of people in Hollywood have seen some of these things, and it comes out in the movies. They write about it. It comes out in the costume designs. A designer's seen it 10 years ago. Guess what? Now I'm going to create what I saw. But to people, it's, oh, wow, how did you come up with that design? That looks so good. How did you come up with the concept of this movie? That's so good. They're never going to come out and say, oh, yeah, because I've seen something like that on the highway. I think Hollywood is telling more truth than we realize, but they cover it by making it a movie and being like, this is not real, guys. But that's my theory. Let me know your theory, your guys' theories about everything. Area 51. Do you think my theory is too out there? What do you think of my Hollywood theory? Let me know down in the comments. Do you agree with it? Is there a flaw in the theory? Hey, I'm here to learn, So let me know down in the comments below. About 10 years ago, Sarah's family was driving down a forest road. Sarah was in the bed of the truck along with the family's German Shepherd. Her dad was driving, her mom was in the front passenger seat, and her sister and her cousin were in the back seat. Suddenly, the dog starts barking and growling, and Sarah is looking to see what it is, thinking maybe they're passing by a bear or a mountain lion. But what she said she saw was a tall, dark figure walking parallel to the road about 60 to 70 yards away. She yelled at her dad to stop the truck, and when she told him, I think I saw Bigfoot, he just laughed and continued to drive. When she looked back, The figure was walking away from the road this time, and the last thing she saw was its head disappearing down the hill. Now, to this day, she doesn't know what she saw, but whatever it was, it definitely wasn't an animal, and it was definitely too big to be a human. Now, these next two encounters come from military vets, but this first encounter comes from a third party. So the person that witnessed this apparition I'm about to talk about told another vet, and then that vet told me. So as with every story on this podcast, and honestly any other podcast, it's up to your personal discernment whether or not you believe somebody's story, because there's no way to 1000% vet every single story that comes through. You can vet some things and be like, okay, well, this information doesn't add up. But at the end of the day, I wasn't there when they had their encounter. You wasn't there when they had their encounter. So you don't know 1000% if the story is true or false. But I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So if you give me a story, I believe you, unless it comes out that you falsified the story. But in the world of, sharing your encounter, I would say you're innocent until proven guilty, basically. I believe you, unless it comes out later that you falsified your story, which rarely, if ever, happens, in this niche. So I'm not worried about it. I trust everybody that sends me a story, because first of all, you're taking your time out of the day to email somebody that you barely know to let them know about an encounter you had. You know what I mean? So the fact that you're doing that and you're not getting paid from it, it's not like you're on ABC News or Good Morning America telling your story. No, you're not getting fame or money from it. So I believe everybody who sends me a story. I believe them. It's just a matter of making sense of the stories that I'm getting. Like, where do these things come from? What do they want? What's the point of intimidating us but not doing anything to us? At least for the ones who survive their encounters. That's the point. And I'm just hoping that by collecting stories and encounters and then sharing them, that I'm encouraging other people to share and letting other people know they're not alone. But also I'm hoping that I'm helping people who are sharing their encounters to get it off their chest, to take that weight off, to have some place to talk about it and to vent, because it's hard. I mean, we live in a world where you can't go, there is no therapist for cryptid alien sightings. There is no Dogman therapist. There is no Bigfoot therapist, alien therapist. So it's kind of like podcasters and other people who have had encounters is all we really have. The Facebook groups, the Instagram pages. Anyway, I'm going on a long rant. This first encounter, it's very weird. I don't know what to make of it. Once again, this is a third party encounter. So take it with a grain of salt. But here we go. So this encounter comes from a military vet that was deployed in Afghanistan, and he was on fire watch. And while on fire watch, him and his crew saw a man approaching base from the desert. Now, they yelled at him to stop, put your hands up. And the man stops, but then he bends backwards and starts to dislocate all his joints and crawl towards them. They all raised their weapons, and right when they did that, whatever this thing was disappeared. Right there in front of all of them. This thing dislocates its joints, crawls towards them, and disappears. But the weirdest part was that it came up, this entity, apparition, ghost, skinwalker, demon, whatever you want to call it, it came up on the heat detector until it disappeared. So this thing showed up on their heat detector, the thing that sees body heat, it showed up on there until it disappeared. And everybody that was out that night, that crew saw it. Several guys saw it. And it wasn't just, stress or, oh, maybe, from the stress from the heat, hallucinating because you've been out there for so long. No. Multiple people saw it, but not only that, a machine detected it, picked it up. So what do you guys think it was? For it to be picked up on a heat detector, I mean, it could, I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it. Because, all of the stories I've heard of skinwalkers, I don't think, I mean, it could have been a skinwalker. But then it seemed as if they said they saw a man. So it's not like they saw a man with animal fur on, or they saw a man with a deer's head on. It was just a man. And it wasn't until they yelled at him to stop that he started dislocating all his joints and crawled towards them. So what the hell was that thing? So for it to everybody to see it, and then for it to disappear. And not only that, but to come up on their machine, to be detected by the machine. I don't know. I doubt it's a skinwalker, but I also doubt it's a ghost. I really don't know what to make of that. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Down in the comments below, let me know. Now, the second story comes from another guy who was deployed in Afghanistan, and we'll call him Matt. It's even weirder than the first story. Let me know what you guys make of this. One night, while sleeping, Matt said that he felt something tugging and nibbling at his feet. He woke up and kicked it off. And what he said he saw wasn't any type of animal that he's ever seen in his life or ever even heard of in his life. It was a little humanoid figure that he could only describe as looking like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. But being, out in the desert with a little bit of sleep, he chalked it up to, okay, maybe it's the stress, the heat, the desert. I'm seeing things. I'm hallucinating. But a couple days later, while on watch with another guy, the other guy pointed out something at the stone wall or at a stone wall in the distance and said, "What the fuck is that?" They looked through their binoculars, and crawling across the top of the stone wall was that little humanoid creature. The same one, or at least he thinks is the same one that was nibbling on his foot a few nights before. All right, I want to hear it. At least, I want to read it down in the comments below. What you guys think of these two encounters? Let's start with the weirdest one. The little Gollum humanoid thing chewing on his foot. And then for the group to see it, for multiple people to see it running across a stone wall in Afghanistan. But also, what do you guys think of the first encounter? The joint dislocating apparition. Once again, was not only seen by multiple people, but also picked up on a machine, on a tool, scanner, detector, whatever you want to call it. Well, what's your theories on that? The first, matter of fact, I don't really have a theory for either. The little creature, I don't know where to begin with that one. That sounds like, I want to say gremlin, but at the same time, I want to say like maybe it's like a impish thing, like an impish cryptid. But it's humanoid. I don't know. That's so weird. Like, I don't know. I don't really have any theories other than Afghanistan got some really weird ish going on. I would like to look into the history of Afghanistan, but for all you history buffs, hit me with some knowledge. What's up with, what are some fun facts about Afghanistan? Because what do you guys think that little humanoid creature was? What do you think that apparition was. I want to say it's a ghost, but then you know what? The first one probably was a ghost. It was like it was probably a ghost. Ghost slash demon is the best thing I could say for the first one. For the second one, I have nothing. I guess if you're of Muslim faith, you would say that was a jinn. If if you're the type of Christian that says everything's a demon, anything that's out of the ordinary is a demon, was it a demon? Was it a jinn? Is it part of that fairy folk group that, sounds like something you would bump into in the woods, honestly, not the desert. And where the hell is this thing? Like, where does it go? Like, is there a cave system in Afghanistan? I feel like there is. I'm not 100%, 1,000% sure, but I'm pretty sure there's a cave, like a deep, deep cave system in Afghanistan. If so, I don't know, maybe that explains a little humanoid figure, but I don't know. Because in both instances, multiple people are watching this or, they've seen it. One was picked up by a tool, by, a detector. The other people witnessed this thing running across the stone wall. So I don't know. Something that small, like, oh man, can you imagine a bunch of those small little humanoid things? Like, I'm talking hundreds of them. Oh my God. That makes my skin crawl. Just imagine like you wake up and you're surrounded by 50 of them little things. Like, I'm gonna have to go on to the next story, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And military vets, police officers, first responders, firefighters, doctors. Hey, send me your stories because I know y'all got them. I know y'all definitely have them. So reach out to me. Can't wait to hear from you. These last two stories are from post-Hurricane Katrina, from people who had to do body recovery. And I did warn at the beginning of the episode that, disclaimer might get a little graphic, but I'll try to tone it down. What I have decided to do instead is just completely omit a lot of the detail because the person didn't get too gruesome. Like, they didn't go all out. Just tell, it's not Saving Private Ryan type stuff. Well, actually, some of it is, but most of it is not. But I'm still, even with the tame details, I'm still just going to take those out and I'm going to get right to the story. So the story is actually going to be shortened by like a little bit more than half. But it's not going to ruin the experience of the story. It's not going to ruin the story, if you know what I mean. It's just like they're doing body recovery. So the state of a body that the story is about, they do add, it's like 2 details about the state of the body, but I'm not going to share that. Anyway, I'm going to get to the story and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to say any details, so don't worry about anything being gruesome. I'm just going to get straight to the point. But I'm going to skip a lot. So, here we go. This person gave their story because they had to do that. This person has a medical background, and they were assigned, once the waters receded from Hurricane Katrina, they were assigned body recovery, basically to find houses that had people in them still that have passed. And basically once they find, they put on, I think it's like a fisherman's suit where it's like the big overalls, basically like that, or they had on like big boots or, water gear on. And basically they get out the boat, they go into a house and they search the house looking for people that have passed. And if they find a person, then, or people in a house, they put a big red X on the door of the house or somewhere on the outside of the house. That way, the proper people who cleans that up can come through. They know which houses to skip, which houses to hit, basically. Her and another guy were partnered up a lot during these assignments, and they got along pretty okay. And one day they came up on a really old shack because, it was pretty run down in a very bad neighborhood. So it was basically like a shack. It was a house, but it was like a shack because it was just really run down in a bad neighborhood, and the hurricane made it even worse. Right away, she said that she got chills down her spine. Now, mind you, she's done this a lot, but this shack, chills down her spine as soon as she set eyes on it. She knew there was something really wrong. But New Orleans has a lot of that because, it's New Orleans. There's a lot of voodoo practiced, especially in the bad neighborhoods. So, I feel like in New Orleans, you're going to get those kind of vibes a lot where it's a chilling, unsettling, something is wrong type of vibe. But her body was basically screaming at her to get out. Like, this place is evil. Get away. But despite her body's screams, silent screams, they go into the house because it's also their job. How do you report that back to your boss? This house creeped me out, so I didn't go in. The first thing she said she could smell was a person. The second thing was earthy, like an earthy smell. It's hard to explain. So she looked at, her partner, and, we'll call him Ben. She looked at her partner, Ben, and he was white as a ghost. Now, she could tell that he was getting the same feelings that she was getting, that something is wrong about this place. There's just not okay, this place has just got hit by natural disaster type of wrong. This is wrong on another level. Like, you feel it in your soul that this place is evil, more than likely. She could tell he was getting that same feeling. And it was obvious when they saw weird bones hanging from the ceiling. She thinks, small animals, they look like they were bones of small animals. Something has been going down in this shack. She also saw strange beads and carvings in the wood in the walls. So the walls were made of wood and there would be carvings, and she saw strange beads, and she saw, bones of small animals, or what she thinks is small animals hanging from the ceiling. That to me screams voodoo. But anyway, she, goes into what was the kitchen, and there in the kitchen, chained to a beam, was an old lady. She had chained herself by her wrist to the beam. But the creepiest thing, and, she had passed, obviously. But the creepiest part about this is that her face still looked as if she was alive and staring at them. Her eyes were wide open, as if she were alive and staring at them with the wicked smile showing only partial teeth. She said her skin started to crawl and get goosebumps everywhere. And the back of her neck, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. All of a sudden, after seeing her chained to the beam, past, mind you, chained to the beam, eyes wide open, looking right at them, but, face looking like it's still alive, they hear the most unearthly, laughing, cackling noise she's ever heard in her life. And she said her and Ben, they ran up out of there real well, ran the best they could because, the houses are underwater. And they quickly painted the X and just literally rushed over to the next house. Got in a boat, rushed over to the next house. Now, she doesn't know if that old lady practiced voodoo or whatever. But that scared the shit out of her and scared the shit out of her partner, and it gave her nightmares. Um, she feels sorry for the people. I feel sorry for the people that have to clean that up, that have to go into that shack, you know, and get her, unchain her from the beam. I just nah. So I don't know. She doesn't know what to make of it. My personal opinion is that this lady practiced voodoo and she was into witchcraft, and what they heard was the laughing, cackling. I'll put it this way: it was unearthly, all right. It was definitely unearthly. But that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about this encounter. Sorry for a lot of the uhs and the stutters. The reason is because I was omitting details. So I had to, I either found a way to rephrase it or I just skipped over it. So I had to, looking at the notes, looking at the story and retelling, I had to, choose, be like, okay, once I saw the detail pop up, I'm like, okay, I gotta omit that. And so that was the reason. There's pauses. There's a lot of pauses, a lot of uhs, a lot of stutters. It's yeah. I wish there was a place where I could just tell this whole story uncensored. Like the story is even uncensored, it's basically the same. It's just like I said, the details of what they saw. Yeah, I wish there was a platform where I could do that. But for now, let me know what you think about that. Was very creepy. I told you I would have quit that moment. I would have been done. I would have went back to base. Can't do this no more. I don't know. I probably would have. And they're volunteers. I believe they're volunteers when they did this. I think so. They're not getting paid. They're doing this out of goodness of their heart. Anyway, let me know down in the comments below. Now, for the second post-Katrina story, don't have to worry about anything gruesome or anything like that. This one it's like sad, but also creepy because it is a ghost story, ghost encounter. But disclaimer, it's also third party. It's a third party retelling. Well, I got it from, I'm not getting the story from the person who this or people it happened to. So just disclaimer. But anyway, this story comes from a guy who did search and rescue during Katrina. And while they were on the boat, him and two other guys were assigned. And while they were searching for people, for survivors, they saw a little girl on the roof of one of the houses, waving her arms, yelling for help. So all three of the guys saw her and they turned the boat around to get to the house. And by the time they got to the house, the girl wasn't on the roof anymore. So they assumed she went back into the house to basically tell her family, rescue is on the way. The people on the boat are coming to come get us. Now they get to the house and the guy, we'll call him Jack, Jack and one other guy from the boat they couldn't get through the front door, so they climbed through the window to help, the family or whoever survived onto the boat, out of the house and onto the boat. There was nobody alive inside that house. What they did find, however, what they did find was the little girl they saw on the roof. Same clothes. Her hair was in the same style it was when they saw her. And she had hair ties with the little plastic balls on them. And she had been gone or passed for days. They could tell that she was, it's been a couple days since she passed. But they all just saw her on the roof minutes ago before seeing that. And that's the story. You know what? Retelling this last story out loud, it it hits you different than when you're reading it, because people email you, hey, I have a friend of a friend, or my friend said, this is my friend's story, or this is a friend of a friend's story. And you're reading it in email and you're like, okay, and you're taking notes and all that other stuff. But then when it comes time to record and saying it out loud, it's because when I'm retelling these stories, I'm processing what I'm saying. Because saying it out loud and reading it in your head, two very different experiences. So saying it out loud, I'm processing the story and I'm visualizing the story that the person is sharing, that I'm sharing, that the person shared with me, that I'm sharing with you. I'm processing and visualizing while I'm telling it. And honestly, of all the stories I've told, I have to say this one with the little girl is the most heartbreaking. It's I guess it can be considered scary, um, but at the same time, it can be labeled creepy / scary because this is essentially a ghost story. But then it's just when you process it, it's so heartbreaking, and I don't know. It's a little girl, I just it's it takes a toll. It's emotional. It's anyway. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. Thank you to everybody who sent me their encounter to make this episode possible. Shout out to Barb, shout out to Sarah, Matt, Blake, everybody whose story I shared just now. But merch, I have t-shirts, shot glasses, bags. The description to the Etsy shop for True Untold Nightmares is in the description below. Don't be afraid to send me your encounter or your friend's encounter. The email is also in the description of the video. Or hit me up join a Facebook group. Talk to me there. We can actually hitting me up on Facebook will be a lot quicker because I have the messaging app. So hit me up on Facebook, email me. Yeah, merch. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know your theories and your opinions on all of the encounters and sightings that I shared tonight. And yeah, you guys have a good day, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.